Key stats for picking a winner this week at the 3M Open, where it's been very different winners with unique skill sets, but all of them had two big things in common. We're going to tell you what that was, why they won, and the par threes at this course, very important. We'll tell you why that is. We got to start with the biggest stat, though, of this week. Should you be picking a rested player? In the last 3 years of the 3M Open, 13 of the 17 players who finished in the top 5 either missed the cut or did not play the Open Championship the week before. Lee Hodges, Tony Finau, Cam Champ, missed cut, T28, did not play at the Open Championship. And the big reason for that is fatigue. If you were in the mix the week before at the Open, how are you going to do the next week? There's jet lag going back to America. Thanks for being with us here on Key Stats. I'm Chris Brees for Golfbet. The rest of the team is traveling after the Open, but we have a lot to get to help you pick your winners on tour this week. We're previewing the course, like I had mentioned. Those two big key stats, fit versus form, how the winners of the past had done recently leading up to their wins and how they had done on that course before. We'll see if there's any kind of correlation between those two and our strokes gain leaders of who's gained the most strokes on the field at this course since 2019. We got to start with those course nuggets. You might know TPC Twin Cities, wider fairways than normal, 16th widest on the PGA Tour. Their average is 35 yards wide. Now, that doesn't mean you need to pick a bomb and gouger or somebody who hits it 350 yards, because we found the stats don't really lean towards needing to have a guy who hits it very far. I know Cam Champ does it, and Tony Finau, Matt Wolff way back in the day. We're going to tell you why driving distance really doesn't matter that much in a minute. It really is about how you just keep the ball in play off the tee and give yourself enough chance. Doesn't matter how far you hit it. The par threes are very intriguing because last year in 2023, the scoring average was below par, 2.98. So you want to pick a player who is very good this year on the par threes. In fact, of the 58 courses that were given stats last year on tour, this was the 51st hardest for par threes. So again, you're picking players who are really good on the par threes. They don't need to bomb in a mile. They just need to keep it in play relatively enough. The reason why I say keep it in play relatively enough is because our one big stat is strokes gained approach, but you're going to couple it with scrambling. Now, look, usually strokes gained approach would seem like a cop-out because it feels like every week the guys who are winning are hitting their irons the best, but the stats on this one did not lie. Look at these 5 winners. Lee Hodges, 1st in approach, 7th in scrambling. Finau, 3rd in approach, 1st in scrambling. Cameron Champ, 19th in approach, 6th in scrambling. You could argue that 19th in approach is really not that good, but Cam Champ was 1st in putting that week when he won. The best putting week of his entire career on tour came that week. That's why 19th in approach didn't sound that great as these other guys. And then Michael Thompson as well, 4th in approach, 2nd in scrambling. Matt Wolff, 2nd in approach, 62nd in scrambling. You'll see there for Wolff, but he hit so many greens that week that Matt Wolff didn't need to scramble very much. So that stat was kind of skewed. In fact, if you pair this with greens in regulation, all of these winners averaged 8th that week in greens in regulation. And I had mentioned off the tee, these guys only averaged 20th place in total driving. So really, I'm telling you, the distance doesn't mean that much at TPC Twin Cities. Okay, people like to make a big deal about a course fit, how somebody's done on a course before, if it fits their eye, in recent form, how they've done leading up to that tournament. So we're picking the last 3 winners of this event: Lee Hodges, Tony Finau, Cam Champ. And how they did leading up, that's the blue box, and how they've done on this course in the past, that's the white box. Now, Cam Champ seems like a major outlier here because he had 4 missed cuts in a row leading up to this event, but you'll notice he got into form the week before with a T11. And that kind of tells you, if you add in Lee Hodges and you add in Tony Finau, you want your winner to be in good enough form. You can pick a player who's been up and down, who's missed some cuts, had some bad rounds, that's okay. but you need to choose somebody who has played well enough in recent weeks that they have been up there. You got a T12 for Lee Hodges leading up. You have a T13 and a second and a T4 for Tony Finau, who, by the way, won this event and then won the next week at Rocket Mortgage. So 2 in a row he won in 2022. He clearly was in good form. So again, you can pick a guy who's hit or miss, but pick somebody who you think has played good enough to compete. And of course, the leaderboards will show you that. Now, course results on here, I'm not really keen on saying you needed to have a fit at this course. I mean, Lee Hodges did have a T16 his only time before. That helps. Tony Finau had been playing some great golf in recent years, had a T3. Cam Champ, you'll see, had missed the cut the only time he had ever played it after the fact. Now, granted, he did have a T16 afterwards, which could mean potentially that it did become a course fit for him. So maybe use a little bit of course form. Some guys that you think have played well enough here, and they've played well enough to a point in that season. Now, strokes gained, I got to put a major asterisk on this week, because usually when we show you, we're going to show you 10 players here. Here's the first 5. Usually we can pinpoint 3, 4, maybe 5 players who we really like this week based on how many strokes they've gained on the field at this event in the past. But I really do feel like, for the sake of transparency, Twin Cities is a little bit different, and here's why. Lee Hodges and Tony Finau obviously going to be 1 and 2 because they both won. You'll notice everybody on this top 5 list, their stats outside of approach really are not that great. Look how many strokes they're gaining on the approach. 2.3, 1.2, 0.7, 0.7, and 1.4. Everything else on this board, very mediocre. That goes back exactly to what I said a few minutes ago about strokes gained approach being that big of a deal. That's why all of these guys have done so well on this course, way more than any other stat. Now, Kevin Streelman, I have to preface here, he's only played twice. Second place last year, had not played before since 2019, and again, 1.4 on approach. Kevin Streelman, take that with a grain of salt, and has not been playing good golf. That's why his odds are so big. Callum Tarrant the exact same way. Massive odds, 200 to 1. He has not been playing good golf at all lately. You'll see he's pretty good on approach. Emiliano Grillo could be an interesting guy because he's had a lot of good finishes here, and he's been solid enough everywhere around this course. The question will be, can his irons be good enough? Now, the second page also gets interesting because Jonathan Vegas, got a preface, a lot like Kevin Streelman. Only played it twice, and Vegas has not played since 2021, where he got second place. But you'll see here again, his approach, 1.2, gaining strokes on the rest of the field, and everything else outside of maybe his driver has been average or below average. So I'm not really convinced that strokes gained this year at this course in the past is something you need to hone in on, though I do want to focus on Sam Burns, because Sam Burns, if you go by the first stat we brought up, how did they do at the Open? Sam Burns had that lights out Saturday, was in contention on Sunday, took a lot out of him mentally. What does that mean for coming back to America, being exhausted? You'll see his stats are very different here. Gaining a ton of strokes off the tee and very average everywhere else, including approach. So Sam Burns, if you play into the notion that coming back to America and playing well the week after being in contention is a problem, maybe you have a problem with Sam Burns. Cam Davis to me is very fascinating because he's been above average everywhere here. His stats are popping in general. That's good. Cam Davis is fascinating to me here because he didn't play the Open, didn't make it, but he's won this year. His problem is, outside of that victory a month ago at Rocket Mortgage, he has not been good on tour at all. In fact, his approach game is awful, and he has been below average in most his stats. But again, you need one hot week. Can he do it? Adam Hadwin, another guy that you might want to look at just based on how he's been playing lately. And Martin Laird is another outlier. He's clearly played well here in the past, had a top 5 recently. His odds are astronomical because he's not playing well very much at all lately either. So those are kind of the nuggets that we're getting at here for the 3M Open. You want to have somebody who's great on the par threes, doesn't need to drive in a mile. Their strokes gained approach are going to be really good. They are great scramblers, and their course history has been good enough, and their recent form has been good enough. Combine all that together, maybe you can make some good picks this week at the 3M Open, and of course we'll see you next time for the Golfbet Round Game.